is all about the postgraduate certificate in access, outreach and social mobility that we've developed in partnership with the University of Wolverhampton and Aspire to 8G, which will be launching in January, and Tracey's going to tell you all about that a little bit later on. I'm really excited about today for a lot of reasons. It's brilliant to be working with Gemma and Tracey, and I will introduce you to both of those as we go through the session. And it's great to be doing something which has got people interested across the country, and I know we've got people joining us from all over today and people from different parts of the sector. There are two specific reasons that this postgraduate certificate is particularly important to me. So firstly, I really feel like we're doing this, the fact that we're doing this now is evidence that we've emerged from one period, a period of reacting to the pandemic, and we've entered a stage of thinking optimistically about the future. So at Causeway, it's always been part of our approach that we balance providing impactful interventions direct to young people with the more strategic work, which is about upskilling and capacity building in the sector. And let's say people have been had a bit less bandwidth for that second element over the last 18 months. Not many people have been kind of thinking about looking beyond to the future and how we're going to deal with the long-term challenges. So this is why, for me, it's really brilliant to be part of something where we are looking to the future and saying we are still in the business of addressing barriers to social mobility in the long term, and we're still about making society fair and working towards that goal. And the second reason I really love that we're doing this is what it says about the way forward. And this qualification is all about investing in people as the solution to overcoming barriers. Now, we all know, I know a lot of people in this room are involved in this work, that important stuff is going on in research and evaluation to test and refine the various models and interventions out there. But this is something a bit different. It's complementary, but it's different. We're about supporting great people to do great things in their own context institutions. And I think that's how we operationalize social change. The solutions are going to be many and varied, but they'll all depend on great practitioners having a deep understanding of the communities they serve. And a key feature of the PG Cert is going to be bringing together teachers, university widening participation practitioners, third sector professionals, employer outreach staff, and others. And I'm just really excited about being part of that buzz in the classroom when we bring dedicated people into that same room. So on the topic of brilliant and dedicated people, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Gemma Aldridge started out as a trainee in the Gloucestershire Echo in 2006 and worked in a number of roles in journalism before joining the Sunday Mirror in 2012. By my count, she secured 8 promotions in just over 8 years, and I haven't been stalking you, Gemma, on that. It's just more I was checking your LinkedIn and doing that maths. But she became editor of the Sunday Mirror and the People in March this year. And as Gemma may well mention, we've known each other since we were undergrads together, including working on university outreach schemes. And her really stellar success in her career just doesn't surprise me at all, having known her since then. And it also doesn't surprise me that she's now co-chair of Reach Potential, which she's going to tell you about. Gemma's got an absolute commitment to social mobility, and this is drawing on her own experiences, but it's also clear to see in the work that she does. And I'm really happy that she's able to join us today. She's kind of on holiday right now, so we're even more pleased that she's joining us. So thank you, Gemma, and over to you.
Thanks, Sam. What an introduction. I hope I can follow it. Yeah, it's really great to be here, and I just think this is such a fantastic programme that's being launched. I'm super excited about it as well, and excited to talk to everyone here today about what we're doing within the media industry and specifically within my company to try and address some of the discrepancies at the moment between people's backgrounds and representation in the industry. So I'm going to try not to bore you too much, but just share a few slides with you in a minute, just to let you know a bit about what my background is and how that's kind of informed what I'm trying to do in the industry now. So let me just try to do that. Which I think you should be able to now see. We good? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, as Sam said, my name's Gemma. I'm the editor of the Sunday Mirror and the Sunday People newspapers, which also feed into mirror.co.uk. And I'm also co-chair of Reach Potential, which is a social mobility network that's been set up within our company earlier this year, to try to aid social mobility, both within the company and to people joining the industry as a whole, and particularly to young people trying to get into early careers in journalism. So just for a bit of background, the Sunday Mirror and the People are part of Reach PLC, which is Britain's biggest news publisher. We reach about 48 million people uniquely each month. So that might be through our newspapers, our digital platforms, either apps or websites, and also our podcasts and magazines and other offerings that we have. So you'll see some of the brands here that we own and publish, so 129 different regional titles, 9 national papers including the Express, the Daily Record in Scotland, the Sunday Mail in Scotland, the Mirror, which also I work for, the Star, and then 850 social channels, 50 plus websites and podcasts, and as you can see, magazines like OK and New as well. So we have a huge portfolio, but also a huge responsibility, not only to report diversity and be representative of our readers, but also to make sure that our newsrooms are representative as well. When I came into the industry, one of the things that I really noticed was that this just wasn't the case at all. And not only is it very difficult to get into the industry if you're not from a very specific kind of background, but also once you're in the industry, it's very difficult to advance if you don't have a particular set of experience and skills, which you can only get if you're from one of those specific backgrounds. So just for a bit of background as well in terms of numbers in the media industry at large, these statistics come from research that was done by the NUJ and published in May this year. And I have focused specifically on the social mobility aspects because I think they're most relevant for this. But 75% of journalists come from the highest social class, compared with 45% of the general working population. Now I know that term social class is a bit clunky and difficult, but I've used it because it was what was used in the report itself. But effectively that was based on things like parents' occupations, levels of higher education, levels of people being eligible for free school meals when they're at school, and those kind of metrics. And as you'll see, there's just a complete gulf between where we are and where the kind of working population at large is. 89% of journalists have a degree level or higher qualification, compared with 48% of the overall UK workforce, which again gives you an idea of the kind of people that are currently accessing the sector, when actually those levels of qualifications aren't really necessary for all jobs in the sector. And then 92% of journalists are white, compared with 88% of the workforce as a whole. That gap is closing, but it's nowhere near as good as it needs to be. So in response to that, our company Reach has launched Reach Potential earlier this year, which is the network that I was talking about earlier. It's really exciting because it's an industry first. We're the only people doing it at the moment, kind of properly trying to set out a way of monitoring the kind of people that are coming into our business, what their backgrounds are, and working to access the people who have the talent but aren't currently reaching the sector, which is just hugely important for us, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because we're at a time now with, you know, fake news and probably lower than ever trust in the media, where we need to be representative and responsible and make sure that we can engage with our readers and our audiences. And I think you can only really do that if you have people from all areas of society working in those newsrooms. So for a bit of context, Reach Potential sits as part of the wider diversity and inclusion strategy at Reach. So earlier this year, we took on an excellent senior executive, Dr. Julie Humphreys, who is the group head of diversity and inclusion, with a brief simply of improving D&I across the whole company. So she has now launched these 6 networks, Reach Potential being the one focused specifically on social mobility in terms of kind of financial and geographical backgrounds and barriers that people might come up against to do with their kind of education they've received, etc. But there are also, just briefly, Reach Culture, which addresses race and ethnicity, Reachability, which is to do with disability, reach equality, which is to do with gender, reach belief, which is to do with getting a diversity of faiths into the company, and reach out, which is the LGBTQ plus community. So we're all working together to try to improve diversity and access. But reach potential specifically, which is sort of my baby, I suppose, has as its mission statement, as you can see there, we aim to make practical improvements to social mobility within the company and for those joining the wider media industry. You can read what it says there. We know life would be boring if we were all the same, and we understand, crucially, the value of a workforce with varied lived experiences, backgrounds and perspectives on life. And we want every person from every financial, geographical and educational background to have the opportunity to thrive. And we believe that our company will be richer as a result. And this is something that I feel really passionately about. As Sam said earlier, I rely quite heavily on my own experiences of access and outreach to inform what I'm doing now. And I've had some fantastic experiences and some not so good experiences. Going back 20 years, I grew up in a very rural area with not great opportunities for young people. I went to a school which was underachieving in terms of grades, but also just didn't really send many kids into higher education. Neither of my parents went to university. And so while I had good grades and I knew that I wanted to get out and do something, I didn't really have much direction. I was lucky to have some really good teachers who helped me to get the grades that I needed, but again, they didn't really have the experience of sending kids to high level universities. So my school was targeted by the Cambridge University Access Scheme, who asked for kids with, some of you may have heard of it, asked for kids with good grades, but who went to schools that didn't traditionally send kids to Oxbridge to go and shadow a student for a couple of days. I went, I did it, I loved it, I applied, I got in, and hence that was where I met Sam. And at that point I started working as part of the university access as well. I had shadows myself come and shadow me, and over the years that I was there, 2 of them then went on to get in, and now have really successful careers as well. So it worked really, really well for me. There was also some great peer-to-peer mentoring going on at Cambridge. We had something called the College Parenting Scheme, which Sam and I were linked through as well, where every student, no matter their background, automatically was paired with other students who were already there. There was no kind of feeling that because you didn't know other people that had got into Oxbridge, you were left out in any way. And it worked brilliantly. But then when I graduated, I kind of felt like I went right back to the beginning, climbing the mountain again, trying to get into the media industry, because where in some industries there was quite a clear trajectory. If you had a good degree from a good university, you could get onto a training scheme and just kind of get into some of the more traditional careers. With media, it felt like it was based very much on who you knew, and also your financial security in terms of being able to afford to do unpaid internships and unpaid work experience, which I didn't have. And so I went back to working in a minimum wage in a motorway service station back in the middle of nowhere. Felt awful about it all, and spent a really long time actually then kind of working very hard, getting experience on local papers, and it's kind of in my holidays. And then I eventually moved to London, but was working on a very low salary for a long time, got into a lot of debt, before I eventually managed to persuade the Mirror to give me a job as a reporter. And thankfully, since I've been in this company, I have been, as Sam said, promoted quite quickly, and I'm now feel incredibly privileged to be doing the job of an editor. But I know that I am the exception to the rule, and I know that there are lots of people out there who have, you know, the passion and the intelligence and the right skills to do these jobs, but perhaps don't have the right kind of access. So that's why I'm working with Reach Potential. So what we believe is your story is your strength. It's not something you should shy away from. It's not something you should be ashamed of where you come from. If anything, there are things that you can learn that make you a better candidate in some ways if you've had to fight for your seat at the table, which I truly believe. And as I said earlier, widening participation in journalism is not only about doing the right thing. It's about making our business better. We have a responsibility to be representative, and the only way that we're going to do that is by making our newsrooms more diverse and having people from all kinds of different backgrounds. So what are we doing as a network? So a big part of it is outreach. So we've launched the big outreach program, which is super exciting. So this is within the network, we've got about 60 of our employees who have signed up to go out into schools and talk about what we do, trying to get people from about age 14 up to get them interested in journalism and just raise awareness really of the kinds of careers that are available to people, because at the moment I don't think it's something that people are necessarily aware of unless they come from a background where they know somebody who's worked in the media. We've got two really exciting events coming up, one at the end of September, which is a kind of insight day, and it's a for want of a better word, sort of a broadcast assembly, which is going to go out to about 500 pupils across the country, kind of letting them know who we are, what we do, and the kind of careers that are available. And then at the end of October, we've got some smaller workshops happening over a couple of days for older kids, sort of GCSE age kids who will learn about what happens in a newsroom, writing, interviewing skills, all those kinds of things, if they're interested in getting into the industry. And then we'll help them with CVs and help them with applying for our internships and trainee schemes, if that's what they so wish to do. And then also just internally within the company, there's loads of work being done, which is just really exciting and really heartening to see. So we've now made it, it's not just lip service anymore, we've made it policy that every hiring manager has to do inclusive hiring training, which addresses not only the things that we all know are problems to do with gender and race and ethnicity, but also social mobility and socioeconomic backgrounds. Every manager with more than 10 direct reports has to have a specific D&I policy, including social mobility, that they work on. We've got an internal census called Be Counted, which is an opt-in survey that is our way of monitoring how well we're doing over the years of getting people from varied backgrounds into the company, and just generally talking a lot more about this issue, and with the aim of making sure that we diversify and get people from all kinds of backgrounds into the company. And I think that's about it, and that's my email address if anyone wants to get in touch.
Brilliant, thanks so much, Gemma. Now we've got a little bit of time for questions before we move on to the detail of the PG Cert. So if you have any questions, you can either drop your questions straight into the chat, or you can put your hand up and we'll come to you and you can unmute and put your camera on if you like and ask your question. Or you can just drop a me in the chat. So yeah, any questions? Here we go. So Joanna has asked, I'd love more details about the Insight programme for schools. Please can you post a link in the chat?
I don't have a link to hand, but I will send one to you. It's currently being advertised on the Speakers for School platform, Speakers for Schools platform, if you want to go and have a look at that, if you're already using that. Otherwise, I can get links to Sam afterwards that he can send around. But there's actually no capacity limit on the first one, which is the kind of Insight assembly, and it's going to be a panel of journalists, photographers, editors, people that work within the company talking about what they do, and it should be quite fun and interesting. And so if anyone wants to sign their school up, then I'd encourage them to do that.
Brilliant. Amy has asked, what are your criteria for working with young people on the outreach programme, e.g. is it household income, etc.?
So we're targeting specifically schools, so it's all state schools, and we're targeting specifically schools who have a high proportion of pupils who are eligible for free school meals, or areas where that we know to kind of have issues with sending kids either into higher education or kind of low expectations for employment following school. But I would encourage anybody who works in a school, in a state school, to apply, especially for the first one, because as I say, there's no cap on the amount of people. It'd be something like this where you could just sign your school in and we'd be able to broadcast to you.
And Kath has asked, has the Mirror developed a specific policy around unpaid internships?
I'm not sure whether this is in writing yet, but yes, we no longer do unpaid internships. So there's a minimum, it's more than the minimum wage. I believe it works out at about £100 a day, maybe slightly more. And yeah, so we try not to work experience. Sometimes if it's like people's kids, they'll come in at a younger age, but in terms of internships, so you're actually kind of working, we don't do that anymore.
Great. Helen's asked, I'd like to know more about the Big Outreach programme. Do you work with university students?
At the moment, we don't work with university students, but if that's something that you want to get in touch about, then definitely do. As I've said, this is our first year, and so we've started by targeting schools, because I think a lot of the problem is not getting to people young enough, and then perhaps not having that aspiration to do the kind of job that they could be doing because they don't know it exists or they don't know it's for them. Certainly when I was at school, I never would have thought that I could go and be an editor of a national newspaper. It would have been, if somebody had said that to me, I would have just thought it was complete madness. But those opportunities are there, and I think if people are kind of channeled in the right way, then they can get there.
Great. Lots of appreciation in the chat here. Joanna said, thanks, looking forward to promoting the programme to schools in the London Enterprise Advisor Network, so that's great. Nicola said, a lot of students from widening participation backgrounds choose journalism as an undergraduate course, whereas it's often better to do a traditional subject and then a postgrad. What is your advice on this, and how can we advise students to select the best degree for future careers in journalism? Very good question.
I think there are two things here. I think the first thing is that we need to get out of this mindset that you need a degree to be a journalist, because you don't. If you want to go to university for other reasons, you know, education for education's sake and for the experience, whatever, I'm really glad that I went to university. But I know a lot of people that are senior editorial staff at the Mirror and on other titles in Reach who don't have a degree. So if it's not something that you want to get yourself into debt for or whatever, you don't need it. What you do need is NCTJ training, and so you can do that either in I think a 3-month short course or a year longer course. There are lots of places across the country, higher education institutions that do it, and that's what I'd recommend. That's the one thing that most people will be asked if they go for an interview as a candidate for a junior reporter job or something, is, are you NCTJ trained? So that's the key thing. If people do want to go to university, I would say, yeah, I pretty much agree that doing an undergrad in journalism doesn't have a huge amount of benefit. I think doing a degree and then a postgrad diploma, which is what I did, is a better route probably.
Great. And Melanie has asked, do you work with children in the care system?
At the moment, not specifically, but I'm sure there will be people in the care system who, you know, through our outreach to schools are involved with us. And I think definitely it's something that we should be looking at as well. And so if you've got specific access to those kind of kids, I mean, obviously we'd have to look at safeguarding issues as we do with all of our work, but definitely it's not something that we would rule out at all. There's no reason why we shouldn't be working with those kids.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. Any final questions for Gemma? Because I think we worked through all the ones in the chat. If I've missed your question, just repost it. But I think we got all of them there. Yeah, Emily's saying thank you. She's going to drop you an email. Brilliant. Okay, thanks so much, Gemma. And yes, and from Aspire to HE has thanked you as well. So on that note, we will move over to the next part of the session today, and I'm going to introduce Tracey. from University of Wolverhampton. As I said at the start, it's been brilliant to work with Tracey and her colleagues at University of Wolverhampton and Aspire to HE on the development of the postgraduate certificate. We get really excited in our planning meetings, and there's lots of enthusiastic nodding all around in our Teams chats. Everyone in the team is really passionate about what we're doing. So Tracey is going to take us through some more of the specifics of the qualification.
Thanks very much, Sam, and thanks, Gemma, because that was really helpful to kind of know what's available out there. And I can see lots of chat, but particularly why it has been so important to work with Causeway to support them in developing a programme that actually helps others develop that way of thinking as well. What I have here is a small presentation on really what we've produced as a postgraduate certificate, and I say it's very much a collaborative opportunity that we have been working very closely with Causeway, and we're very excited about being able to offer this in January this year. So this is really giving you a little bit of an overview and background to this, and I'm going to do the classic. Could I have the next slide, please? Because I couldn't quite get mine to come up and show. But Sam kind of spoke about this at the very beginning, and I know Gemma has also mentioned the real importance of having this. I think she used the term business critical, and I think as well it's really important that we kind of identify the people that are going to be best placed to make a difference. And so the postgraduate certificate is designed for virtually anybody and everybody that is there to support the changes and implement opportunities that are going to create that social mobility. We've had lots of interest from people from different walks of life, and we've talked about it in terms of schools, careers advisors, but I think it's much broader than that. And I think Gemma's kind of opened my eyes to the context that it can be much broader than just that educational capacity. And so what we're doing is responding to the requirements, the gaps within the academic world in particular, by providing a space for people to be critical and analytical, and maybe even challenge some of the things that are happening at the moment. The other unique thing about this postgraduate certificate is that it does give that opportunity for progression. So if people did want to go on and do further academic study, it also offers that kind of segue into larger awards if that's sort of interest. Could I have the next slide, please? So what we can offer, I think it's a unique opportunity that the strong collaboration that we have with Causeway offers us a qualification that has very much based on the skills, knowledge, expertise and experience of Causeway, and the academic support and level that would enable people to really start to think critically about how they might support the needs of young people, particularly in, for example, post-age 18 destinations. It's a 60 credit module, as I said, and so it gives you the opportunity to explore and in particular offer things such as career advice. It's not specific to just career advice though, and I just wanted to make sure that people were aware as well that it gives the opportunity for you to be able to take part in debate and analysis. And I think Gemma, it was really interesting to hear you talking about kind of the background that you've come from and where you are now challenging that system. And I think that these programs of educational in terms of the PG Cert is really useful to have that space. And I, like you, I kind of came into education not from a family that has anybody that had a degree before me. So in fact, my daughter got her degree before I did. So it is a really interesting way of kind of challenging those kind of stereotypes. And I think that that's what we can offer very much, a widening participation university, working with an organisation with those skills as well. Can I have the next slide, please? So how is it delivered? We're delivering it in a very blended way. We are doing that, and I think you've probably heard lots of this terminology: blended, hybrid, online, distant. But what we're aiming to do is offer an opportunity for people to come together at some point where they can come to the Walsall campus, have face-to-face interactions and events. But I think that the most important part of this, and Sam may be able to elaborate on this a little bit as well later, is the CPD opportunity and the takeaway opportunity. So it's also about the practicalities of being able to go back into workplaces and actually implement some of the ideas and suggestions that are being in place. So it's not just about learning to write at an academic level. It's so much more than that. It's about being able to facilitate networking opportunities, having the opportunity to speak with guests about, for example, such as Gemma, to be able to come on and hear what's really happening in practice, but also provide you with high quality resources and things that are specifically tailored to the area within that you're working within. So we're not just saying, oh, we're just going to focus on colleges. We're actually looking at the people that will be attending and really looking at best fit for them. So we have a blend of face-to-face, we have a blend of opportunities online for virtual engagement in exactly the same way as we're doing now. And then we also have that opportunity for people to work through material at their own pace, so that they can dip into material that's most relevant to themselves. Can I have the next slide, please? What's covered in this module is 3 level 7 modules, and we've done it in a very sort of integrated way. There is assessment opportunities within this, so if people perhaps have not studied for a little while, we're there to also scaffold and support that. But we have 3 specific modules, and the first module is really I suppose deepening your understanding of what the context is. So the issues around access, business critical working, all of the inclusion issues that come about. So we'll be looking at those things that have informed current practice and perhaps getting people to question and to think and to challenge. So it's kind of bringing that context at the very, very beginning. As you go through that first module, we'll support you with some of those reading contexts, but we're also going to be asking you to think about research. And we often find being research informed is a really important element of this, even if it's perhaps thinking about school improvement plans or opportunities for change management. And our second module supports you in understanding how research evidence-based influences practices and policies, and how you might yourself be able to make those changes going forward. And then the final of the 3 modules is very specific in terms of the critical reflection on your professional practice and really enabling you to be able to have a positive impact through your practice. So making those changes. Gemma makes it sound really easy in terms of the things that she's putting in place, but I know the hard work and determination behind getting that off the ground. And I think what that particular module is enabling people to stop and think about how they might take that journey towards making that difference. So that's our kind of our 3 modules and why we've pulled them together in that way. May I have the next slide, please? We always do have to come to cost, and I know that cost is something that a lot of people have been asking about. And so if I say that the university is charging 2,600 for the credits, and I add that kind of element to it as well, that I feel that this is an investment opportunity to raise awareness and raise opportunities for people to really make a difference, in particular around the areas of social mobility. But it's also about the individual and the individual's opportunities to also pursue their own career opportunities. And it's very much tied in with the MA education. So for those people that do undertake the postgraduate certificate, there is that opportunity to transfer those credits across to an MA. For those that have prior credits, it will also mean that there are less modules that need to be completed on the MA education. So it's a really supportive route towards that MA education if people are interested in that. And may I have the final slide? I think it is now, please. Thank you. Yeah. And that's just saying, as like a sort of short and sweet, this presentation will be available to you. So if you want to go through it again or just scrutinize it a little further, or if you'd like to have more information about perhaps your particular context, I've added my email address there, and I'm very happy to chat with groups of people if they would like to know a little bit more. And I think as well, I'm working very closely with Sam on the development of resources. And as Sam said, we are exceptionally excited about the opportunity. So I will kind of draw to a close now and hand over to Sam.
Thanks, Tracey. Yeah, we're really looking forward to it. And I suppose just to say, it's an incredibly collaborative endeavour, and Causeway will be delivering parts of the sessions. The way that the timetables worked out is there'll be days in Wolverhampton, and we'll both have Wolverhampton staff there and Causeway staff there, and we'll be kind of running different sessions throughout the day. And Causeway's role in the delivery is more about the more kind of CPD style bits, the kind of building on the work that we do with schools and university outreach staff and student ambassadors, the kind of training we run to help people get straight to practice and thinking about using the theory, but then how am I going to use this in the workplace, and giving out exemplar resources that, as we always do. So anyone that's experienced our training, you'll have a sense of the kind of content that we're going to be doing on the course. Some great positive comments in the chat here. So we're going to go to questions now. So if you've got any questions for Tracey, please do put them in the chat. We've got one here from Isabel. Is there an option for the MA to have the same focus on access, outreach and widening participation? Ooh, good question.
Yes, there is. We're revalidating our MA education and looking at this. And I think it's been really useful for me to be part of this, because we recognise that in terms of the university kind of celebrating the fact that we do support widening participation, that is going to be something that will be changing as well.
Great. People are saying, when do applications open? That's a question you want to hear.
Yep, applications will be open hopefully at the end of October. At the moment, I'm taking expressions of interest from people. So if you are interested and would like to know a little bit more, you're welcome to email me and I can give you any information.
Great. Very good question here from Paula. Is the programme just aimed at those working with young people? I work with adults and support with raising aspirations, social mobility, etc.
It's aimed at everybody, and then as we were saying in particular, what we do with any of our Masters awards, we always make sure that we know the people that are studying at that time, and so we tailor for the needs of the people that are joining us, because it's such a broad context when we put in our outreach and access in that. In actual fact, we are catering for much broader context in terms of our students. Yes.
And I would say there's loads of great things about working with Tracey and her team, but one of the things I enjoy the most is just how insistent they are on tailoring things to the students and making sure that we're delivering an experience which really responds to the specific participants. And so yeah, that's something that's absolutely core. I think the other point is we're not going to be giving kind of pre-packed solutions. So we'll be exploring loads of material, but people on the course, it's all about skilling people up to find their solutions. So absolutely, it's up to people to kind of find the solutions in their context, and we're there to support them to do that. Okay, couple more questions. So what percentage of teaching will kind of in person versus online? What's the split?
I would say that in terms of online, that is quite minimal, because what we're doing is providing resources that people can work through. We have a timetable of events so that people will have advance notice of when we'll have opportunity for what we call our synchronous. So in the same kind of way that we're doing the webinars today, if you can't attend the live session, that you will have the resource to be able to review at your own pace. We have 6 days that we would be expecting you to attend. In terms of 4 of those will be on the campus in Wolverhampton, in Walsall, sorry, no, wrong place. And 2 days would be virtual. And then we have a mixture then of sessions that you would be able to engage with in terms of forums. And then the other part of that might be, like we were just talking about, live sessions where we might be able to do Q&As and support with assignment work. So it's a balance of recognition that we have people from all over the country thinking about this qualification, and also having the opportunity to manage that within your workload. So I haven't necessarily given you a percentage, but what we are doing is trying to be flexible as possible within that. So I hope that's answered that question.
Yeah. And those face-to-face days are going to be intense and a lot of fun. So I think it's that balance between, as Tracey's worked out a really nice timeline where it's a real mixture of things. Okay. Will the days be in the week or weekend?
They are in the week at the moment. We recognise it's also about making sure people within their own workplace are recognised for the amount of work that that takes. And so we wanted to make sure that that was an opportunity for you to book that ahead of time. We are also very aware, and I am still aware, that we are under COVID restrictions in certain elements where people perhaps from vulnerable backgrounds may not be able to attend. And so we can offer the opportunity to have recorded sessions. And I am also at the moment live streaming some of the events from campus. So we do have alternative opportunities for people that might not be able to attend.
What's the intensity of study, thinking about fitting it in around full-time work?
I think this again goes back to that flexibility of being able to access the material as you are going through it. So we don't stipulate that you must have done any particular reading in a particular week. What we do is we'll tell you that we might be looking at live events that you might want to attend. We do one-to-one study support as well where required, and we have an opportunity for different assessment points. So we will prepare you kind of for that assignment. We do it so that we also do it in small chunks. So rather than saying to somebody, right, you have to write a 3,000, 4,000 word assignment at the end of it, we actually prepare you by doing lots of the work within the daytime sessions. We'll give you that debate and discussion so that you then will be able to work on that assignment as you're going through. I'm not going to say it's going to be straightforward and easy for everybody. It's just managing that time. But what we've done is we've tried to offer that flexibility as much as we possibly can. You're looking at probably between 6 and 12 hours of perhaps reading during any particular study area. But we also do encourage you to attend those days where a lot of that discussion will take place.
And some practical questions about the programme start date and the programme end date.
Yeah, the start date will be in January. We'll give specific dates as soon as we have the portal open, and we will be running through until the end of July, August, and with a hand-in date in September. And so we're doing it from January to September on this particular occasion, but we will be looking at starting in September for future times of start.
Another question, I don't know if this has been answered, about the average number of hours of study per week.
Yeah, I mean, it's dependent upon how you study yourself. I would say that if you can do an average of 2 or 3 hours of reading or dipping into materials, then you will be able to keep pace with some of the things that we're looking at. For other people, it might be that actually they quite like to catch up in a day at the weekend. So on average, it can be anywhere between 2 to 6 hours for you to be able to read through some of the material, or maybe engage with some of your peers online and take part in that. But we do, as we said, we are there in a flexible route. So if people find that they're perhaps falling behind a little, we're there to support as well.
And a question, when will the face-to-face sessions take place? Would they be in the daytime or evenings?
They will be in the daytime, and as you just said before as well, as Sam was saying about the kind of ways that the session is set up, it will be for the entire day, but we'll make sure that you'd have those dates in advance so that you could make sure that you book them if you were traveling from a distance, and it also gives people that opportunity. We are as well, and again that goes back to the group of people we have. If we find that people do need some of their events taking place in the evenings, we can also do those virtual teaching sessions that are kind of more synchronized within twilight and evening times.
For those face-to-face days, we won't start at 8:30 a.m. It will be kind of 10:30 to give people a chance to have a reasonable journey. But again, people's contexts will be different and we'll be flexible around that. A question related to this, will the dates for the on-site days be confirmed when applications open?
Yes, we could do that, because I think that will help people start to strategically think ahead. That's not a problem at all.
Brilliant. I think that's all the questions we've had posted. Again, if I've missed the question, please post it again. And yeah, just as we're nearing the end now, does anyone have any further questions? Okay, brilliant. Well, in that case, I suppose it just, oh, yeah, no, that's not a question. Just left to say, yeah, as Helen has said in the chat, thank you. Thank you very much to Gemma. That was just brilliant for kind of contextualizing why we're all here. And I think it's particularly nice to have an example from an employer. I think a lot of us are very familiar with the situation in schools and colleges and maybe university outreach, but it's so important to see the whole picture, and that's what we really want to do in the PG Cert. So thank you so much for that contribution. Thank you, Tracey, for excellent outline and answering the questions. And we look forward to seeing all of you in this chat at some point in a classroom in Walsall. So we will send around make this recording and anything else available to you afterwards, and do get in touch with me and Tracey about anything to do with the PG Cert, and with Gemma about anything to do with Reach Potential. And thank you for coming.